Hey everybody and welcome back to the channel. So today, 29th of March, CCP was on Twitch and they were doing a live presentation in regards to the current changes incoming for the industry patch that is coming in April. Now, it was an hour and 20 minutes, so I've picked out about 10 snippets from this. We will listen to what they have to say and I'll give my take on it. So I hope you enjoy, and just bear in mind this is my opinion, so again, take it with a grain of salt.
We said back in March, I think a year ago, that we know what we're doing, we know that we're doing changes, and we know what we're doing with moon mining and all that. And we had a small sentence that kind of hinted that we're going to be touching industry. Like, there was a small sentence that actually tried to say that without actually saying it, because it was way too early. It was like 12 months ago. Well, this is it. We're there.
So point number one here is this has been in the works by the sounds of it for a good year. That generally started with scarcity, the changes to high-sec moon mining, the ore distribution. This, by the sounds of it, has been their long-term plan. And they do say later on in the presentation that they need to make space for things to be slotted in and for it to make sense. And that's where we are now, that they've had this time to obviously change things up and move things around a bit, and that has been making space for this industrial patch to come along and to be inserted, and again for it to make sense when they actually did. And again, sometimes this can be a bit awkward because we don't always see what's coming, and obviously things change that you enjoy doing and you scratch your head and think, well, what's going on here? But I think sometimes we just need to let CCP do their thing, and that doesn't mean they don't make mistakes. Obviously they do. EVE is a hugely complex game at the end of the day, and changing one thing can unravel things at another end. But I think a bit of credit every so often. This is what they've been working to, and it's why we've been suffering for the last year.
And this is the big change. It's not only about moons, of course. It's trying to address other stuff, and it's going back to I would say the foundations or the fundamentals of it, trying to restructure it.
So we were presented with this slide, which is a spreadsheet, which is a bit easier to read than the prior one that we had. And again, it goes into the homogenization of the minerals for the T1 items or ships. And we've got no minerals in here for the carriers, etc., which is slightly odd. But it's something I'm a bit questioned or perplexed about, and I wonder if anyone can help me here. User drops. Obviously for T1 we don't need anything because we use the BPO. Same with the carriers. Faction, obviously we need a user drop because we need the BPC in order to build it, and that is obviously faction. And down here we've got advanced. Now I'm not 100% sure what advanced is actually referring to in regards to these ships, because you've got the basic titans, which are your standard titans, the avatar. You've got your faction ones, which are the Moloch even, but the advanced ones I'm not 100% sure what this is, whether this is a new class, something they may bring in the future or what. So if anyone knows, please post it in comments. I'd be, I'm curious to know the answer to that.
Well said. Yeah, if I follow up on that, we've basically created a lot of opportunities for new players, which was a big design goal. They can do their own titanium up to battle cruiser manufacturing and acquisition of materials. They can do their own myco in high sec through exploration. They can do their own PI. All of these have now actual value generation or wealth generation.
So I don't think much needs to be said on this point, but basically CCP are actively trying to encourage new players to do industry and giving them more ways of making ISK initially in the game that are a bit more varied, so you can basically find a way of making ISK that suits your kind of playstyle, so you're not just confined to mining, ratting, or this, that and the other. There's a good portion of different things that you can try to basically just try and understand what it is that you want to do, and I quite like that.
Yeah. So we expect the prices to be very volatile for the next, I would say, 3 to 6 months as things pan out. And don't forget that we are also keeping tabs on everything that happens so that we can inject or take away materials if something didn't go the way that we wanted. So if there's now a potential shortage of something like MICO, or distribution went wrong, then now we're in that learning phase. So we will inject as we need to make sure that the economy is stable and not starved of something very important.
And I think this is a hugely important point. And I know this kind of breaks the sandbox, but sometimes things need to be tweaked. Obviously, the game is constantly evolving, new things are being added, and if we run out of sand, the sandbox isn't going to be a great deal of fun. So, this gives CCP a lot more control on, the vision that they have for the long-term longevity for the game. And, I think this is long overdue. And basically, yes, as they've said there, that they will be monitoring it, and if things do start to run out, or things that they don't want to run out, then they will obviously add them as they see fit in, and that could be the wormhole gases, the gas clouds. They could add more, make them bigger, shrink them depending. And I think that is obviously a big bonus, or a huge bit of control that they now have, where prior they haven't really had this amount of control. Again, we've had scarcity that everybody is really generally hated because it's affected everybody across the board, where, again, this will suck if it affects you, but it literally won't affect everything in the game, where, you change the price of titanium and, well, I can't think of a single item that pretty much isn't affected by the shortage of that, or the increase in price, or the drop in price. So this will give them a lot more ability to change things up as they see fit.
It means to be industry, right? So the people that have been playing for as long as Kenneth have, and as Dr. Spot have, they kind of have this advantage. They know where to look. They have all their spreadsheets all done. And now this shakeup kind of completely messes everything up. So there's new little avenues where people who are kind of new to industry, or maybe are curious about industry, they can kind of put their foot in the door without having this massive disadvantage.
So I don't necessarily agree with CCP Swift here, and that is because, again, anybody that's played the game longer has an advantage, and the advantage that comes with that is that I've been here for 16 years, and the game when I started was a lot simpler, and as time has gone on, it has become more complicated, more stuff has been added, but as it's obviously slowly been added over years, I have had time to get used to, obviously, and adapting to that change. So, starting the game now is a lot harder than it probably was 16 years ago. The actual game itself was harder to play 16 years ago than it is now, but actually picking it up and learning it is much more difficult now, just because there's so much more in the game and so many things to get your head around, where you didn't have that initially. And that gives me the advantage of, obviously, when these changes come in, I'm a lot better placed to be able to adapt to these changes, because it's only one little area of the game that is changing. And yes, it's kind of broad and it encompasses a huge amount of stuff, but it's just that section that I now have to relearn, where obviously if you're coming into the game or just starting in industry or getting you've got so much to learn that you're learning everything, and then all of a sudden you've got these, in industry now it's going to be a lot more complex, so now you've got to learn all the complexities that go with that, where, so say, I've been here for such a long time, I pretty much know how the vast majority of things generally work. Again, I like for PI, I'm not particularly up on PI, but I've got a general gist that you take it off a planet and it comes, and I buy it off the market. But if you're a new player, you've got all these different areas to familiarize yourself with and get used to. So I don't agree with that, and so say it's much harder for new players to understand how everything fits together, where, so say, for someone who is a seasoned industry player, other than changing my spreadsheets around and having to figure out new ways of doing stuff, which again is, let's face it, it's pretty straightforward, isn't going to cause me much pain at all.
T3 cruisers definitely on the table for a review.
So with that, T3s hopefully will be getting a buff of some description, or at least amended, changed. Skill point loss currently sucks. T3s have been power crept quite a lot, There's no real good reason to really be flying one over pretty much any other ship. Yeah, they have their advantages, but again, the power creep is real, and they have been kind of left behind or nerfed into oblivion. So, and obviously with the gas, the wormhole gas is being used in other construction as well. It's likely to push the prices for the minerals that weren't used, and that therefore will push the cost of T3s even higher, making them even worse than where they currently sit. So I look forward to a change in the T3s. So as well, just to bullet point some others here, again, there is potential new ships to be added to the game. These may be in line of being able to compress gas. So obviously you can move the gases out of wormholes because gas is quite big and is currently uncondensable, which is a bit of a pain. T1s, battleships, they want to be looking at, and they may receive a buff. Capital mining changes, again, they didn't really go into what them capital mining changes were, and something that is incredibly interesting is obviously the Intel tool. So there was talk at the end of the presentation, or towards the end, about an Intel tool for the nullsec alliances. So I think I covered the points that I thought were most interesting there, and hopefully that was of some interest to you all. If you are interested in watching the whole thing, I will link it in the description of this video, so do check it out if that's obviously of interest to you. And with that, thanks for your time, and talk to you later.